you our second event with Amy Güth, the first of 6 writers who will be visiting Washington College this year as part of the Lit House Sophie Kerr Screenwriter Series. We would like to thank our colleagues on the Sophie Kerr Committee for teaming up with us on this, as well as our colleagues at several different departments in the college, including English, Communication and Media Studies, and Environmental Science and Studies, for their support and assistance. My name is Roy Kesey. I'm the Associate Director here at the Lit House, and I would like to start tonight's event with the evergreen request to turn your cell phones off and the following land acknowledgement, which for some reason seems more important than ever these days. The Rose O'Neill Literary House acknowledges this region as the original homelands of the Wycomice, the Choptank, and the Nanticoke tribes. We acknowledge their painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory. We honor the indigenous peoples still connected to this land, and we are committed to making our community a more equitable and inclusive place to gather and learn. Tonight, it is my absolute pleasure to reintroduce the producer, screenwriter, and journalist, Amy Güth. As some of you heard at yesterday's event, Amy and I have known each other for years, which means that I have borne witness to her triumphs as a novelist and essayist, as a journalist who worked her way from the digital book section at the Chicago Tribune to a decade as host of a talk radio program at WGN, to publisher of Tribune Publishing Company's Red Eye, a daily commuter newspaper. I witnessed the things she did simultaneously with those jobs in her free time, if you will, working as a senior facilitator at the Op-Ed Project, shaping essays and opinion pieces that appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, U.S. News and World Report, and other outlets, and running workshops at universities including Brown, Cornell, and Columbia, and serving as executive director of the Midwest Independent Film Festival, and founding Pilcrow Lit Fest in Chicago, and serving as president of the board of directors at Bitch Media and the Association for Women Journalists. And I could keep saying "and" for a while. There are many other things. That is not the entire list. Finally, I witnessed the recent period in which she realized that her happiness depended on dedicating her highest gifts to a field that had always interested her, that of screenwriting and producing and directing and even a little acting. And that excuse me. That is what made her the perfect first guest for our Screenwriter series, and she is here today to discuss what it is that producers actually do all day. Dear guests, please help me welcome the inimitable Amy Güth. The way we've set this up tonight is as a sort of screening and talkback. Amy has put together a producer's reel. She's going to show a series of clips from some, not all, but some of the documentaries and ads and films that she has produced. And for each kind of job a producer does, she has a clip illustrating what that job well done looks like on the screen. Before we get started with that, Amy, I wonder if you could clarify something for us. We've all had that experience, right? Where we sit back at the cinema or at home and the film starts and we see a logo, right? We see whatever, the star, the falling stars over the clouds, and then they're zooming at the camera, and then the camera pivots and the stars form that arc over the mountain range, and we're like, oh, Paramount Pictures, right? They're wonderful. They do fine work there at Paramount. And then there's another logo, and it's like Amblin Entertainment, and we're like, oh, Spielberg, nice. I didn't know that he was involved in producing this. And then it's like, in consultation with Oatmeal Productions, and we're like, I don't know who that is, but cool, I guess. Together with Cinnamon Productions and Raisin and whatever. And it goes on, and we're left sort of wondering what all these different companies contributed to the film, right? Obviously, they were doing different jobs, or they were all doing a little of the same jobs, and what were those jobs? And then we watch the film, and then we get to the end of the film, and the credits roll, and we find a bunch of other producers named that weren't part of those companies at the beginning, right? Usually. An executive producer or two, a producer or two, a co-producer or two, right? So my first question for you tonight is, what? Like, what's the difference? difference? What's the difference between those different grades of producer? What's their relationship to the companies shown at the beginning, and their relationship to the film itself?
It's a great question, and one that is asked all the time, even during production, even on a film set, once people are into it. Generally speaking, each production company that you see named at the top of a film contributed in some way. That might mean they wrote a check. That might mean that they supplied the gear. That might mean that they supplied the elbow grease of maybe location scouting, or their director or director of photography works for that company. And so it's, yes, you can, my director and director of photography will be working on this film, therefore our production company will be too. So they contributed a thing. As for the producer credits at the end, that's always mysterious, and a lot of producers have a lot of feelings about that, because often it's used to incentivize funding for a film. Generally, your executive producer means the person who wrote the check or raised the money. So for example, something I worked on recently, there's someone who's an executive producer. She did not contribute any of her personal money, but she did find the people who did. So she put out that call, she went and had those meetings, those pitch meetings, and she got that money together to get the film done. So therefore, it's like, did you write that check or raise that money? Probably an executive producer. A producer is the person who does the work. You're the CEO of the production. You are there to clear obstacles so that the creative work can happen. That's really what I often say. Because even sometimes directors are like, I don't really know what you do, but I know that I need you here. And I say, I'm here to clear obstacles. That's the easiest way to say it. I'm here to clear obstacles so you can do your best work. And I think the tone of the set can be set from the director, but it can even be set from the producer. And I think when you have a producer and a director that are really aligned on setting the right tone, you can have a very positive experience on set by acknowledging, if we are supporting everybody, there's that expression, stay in your lane, and we often think about it in a way of constriction. But I think of stay in your lane like, if I have given you all the fuel in your vehicle and given you the keys to the car and given you an awesome playlist, you're free to just drive that road and go for it and do your best work, right? And so I think it's a matter of like fueling every vehicle, getting all those cars ready to go, so out of the gate they can just all go do their best work. Because the coolest thing about film is that it's a completely collaborative art form. At the end of the day, every single person on set is making a creative decision based on their deal, based on their life experiences and everything that they've gone through and put together to get to that moment. Even the person adjusting the light, right? Each individual person. So to make everyone feel really supported is it's no small task, right? It's culture setting, one project at a time. Then you have your associate producers. That's usually somebody who contributed a smaller dollar amount or did a thing, right? So sometimes that's a person who came in later in the process. There are producers that specialize in something, like maybe a post-production producer or somebody who's very good at PR, and they're not just a publicist, they're not a producer, they're kind of a hybrid role. Sometimes that might be an associate producer, or someone who's like, I'm on the fence. I want to write you a pretty big check, but I sure want to be an executive producer. So you kind of meet them halfway, like, we'll give you a credit. You can be a producer, but not that producer. So sometimes associate producer is like they wrote a smaller check also. Co-producer is a little more controversial, because sometimes that can mean you had two producers on the set doing the elbow grease stuff. Sometimes that means a person wrote a check, right? Or two people wrote a smaller check. That is a very controversial one. It is not, it's not very popular, but occasionally you will see that. And the only way to find out is to ask somebody on the administrative side of that production, like, is that co-producer title a check, or is that a worker bee? And it could be either one, but it's usually like, if it's just producer or co-producer, that's usually involves doing some work. But that's a great question, because it's unclear to a lot of people for that very reason, right? If you throw somebody a bone because they wrote a check and call them an associate producer, or it could be a publicist, or it could just be a producer who was part-time or something, then that becomes vague for everybody. Good question.
So that was I really like that metaphor of getting all the cars gassed up and in the right lanes and ready to go, right? And it's a metaphor. Let's talk about the actual things, right? That's what we're here for. The actual obstacles that were cleared. So if you want to fire up the clips, we can, maybe it would be best if you told us a little bit about the project sort of overall, and then the clip that we're going to be looking at and what we should be looking for, right? Because we don't know what we're looking for. You could tell us what was produced, what obstacle was removed such that this shot could exist.
So the first thing we're going to see is some clips from a documentary called La Mitad del Mundo. It is about sex trafficking of underage women in Ecuador. It was a 12-year process, all in, for many reasons. Part of that was it was all funded through grants. So that was anybody who's ever done any grant writing knows that's a long, long process. But also, some of the young women that we were talking to got re-trafficked, and we lost them and had to find them again. And filming in Ecuador is a whole thing. So that's a whole process of getting down there to do that. So the first thing I want to show you is the opening title sequence, because that was one of the last things we made. And we wanted to show, it was very important to the director that although this was taking place in Ecuador, it's a huge problem all over the world, huge. And in fact, the United States is a huge hotbed of trafficking. There's so much happening here. Up until recently, I lived in Chicago, and Chicago is a huge city for trafficking. What this film became, though, was a tool of advocacy, because it's impossible to just show it and walk away from it. You end up in very heavy conversations and at screenings, and we've been very fortunate that it's done really well at film festivals. Nearby, it got the Audience Choice Award at the Ocean City Film Festival. And the director, Erica Valenciana, she's gotten a lot of Best Director awards that she very well deserved. She works very hard. But so many people have walked up to us at screenings after just random film festival, screenings, and said, my relative was trafficked, or I was trafficked. People will just come up and start in the deep end with these really powerful conversations. And so that's what's been really impactful to me about this film. But we use this visual device of red thread of stitches. Erica, as a director, as just a human being, she decided to opt out of fast fashion, and she makes all of her own clothing. And she's also extremely fashionable and cool as a result. So she has elements of like sewing and fabric in all of her films. But this red thread you'll see on a map it's a fabric kind of looking map. And we use this red thread throughout the film to kind of show how connected this is all over. Uh-oh, did we just do a thing? There we go. So look for the red thread, because we're kind of setting up the idea of, look, this is everywhere, while giving a little bit of data to just kind of start it off the bat. Oh, and suddenly everybody shifts. I mean, there are some open seats on this side, if you can't see. Okay. So that first part kind of shows this red thread going all over the place. Look at all the trafficking happening, and then zeroes us in to this place in Ecuador, saying now this is where we're going to be. A huge challenge of this film is that everybody we interviewed was underage. And so that's what we're going to be looking for in the next clip. So we had a lot of challenges about how do we film them, and how do we edit that? How do we show them? But also, and if you think about a movie, there's like, if there's about to be a scene in, a living room, you're going to show maybe the town and then the house, and then the living room. And what is that here, right? That was a thing we really struggled with, was what do you show as someone is telling a story that's horrific? And we did two things in this film. One of them was we intentionally showed a lot of business as usual to make the point that this is happening in almost every community in the world, that it's happening under our noses and things are going on as normal. So there's some shots I put in here of just kind of business as usual in Ecuador. Another thing we did, I don't have it in this clip, but that we're about to see next, but a thing that we did was, as the girls were talking about the moment they were trafficked, we really struggled with what to show right then, because as you'll see, we had to think very hard about how to show them. And so we showed some scenes of the city, of things happening. We showed a lot of brothels in Ecuador, but also we wanted to dehumanize the trafficker. In every case, it was a male relative or a boyfriend. It was often a stepdad. And we had the girls draw themselves, with their permission, draw themselves, and we had an animator animate them. So we showed not them, but we showed their interpretation of self animated, moving over this video through the town, through the market, whatever. And then we hired an animator to draw the men they were describing. This was my stepdad. He said, "We're going to the store." And then to dehumanize him, you know how you fold a piece of paper and you cut it up and make a snowflake? That was done with black and gray paper. So suddenly this animated man kind of like whoosh, quickly switched to a monster on the screen. It became kind of this like creepy, kind of a thing that looks like, if you've seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, kind of the boogeyman shadow. We like literally turned them into like the boogeyman for that moment. But let me show you, just see what you notice as you see the 3 clips of girls talking about their experience.
Me voy a ir. Lo que sí sé, porque la fiscalía ya dio el permiso para que yo salga. Pero aquí la psicóloga me dijo que todavía no estaba lista para salir, por lo que tengo, sí, muchos miedos.
Vine por trata de blancas. Entonces, bueno, el ADINAPEN me rescató junto a la fiscalía y aquí a las licenciadas del hogar. Desde tanto tiempo, cuando yo ya estaba viviendo aquí con mi hermana, yo ya di a luz y todo.
Bueno, era así un lugar grande y tenía lo que era en la parte de atrás todos los cuartos de, vulgarmente se le dice a los chulos, y acá adelante lo que era donde el bar y los cuartos donde trabajaban las chicas.
There's kind of business as usual, right? A question that I get asked a lot is, why did we blur out the men's faces who were sitting in that brothel? They threw bottles at the film crew. It was an entirely female film crew. And at first it was kind of stupid girls with cameras. And then they realized like they might actually be doing something important that might actually hold us accountable for a thing, and started throwing their beer bottles at the camera. And so we've been accused of, why are you protecting their identities? And in fact, it was more keeping ourselves safe. That if we call them out too much, because ultimately this film is going to be used as part of a PSA in Ecuador that's running on public television. That particular part won't, but a lot of the interviews with the girls, and we have some advocates that talk later in it, that'll be there. So the decision was made to blur them. Not only did they not sign a release form because they were busy throwing bottles and yelling, but also we thought that might be a safety precaution for just the team. So that's a thing. But what did you notice about how we filmed the girls? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We didn't show the whole face. Yeah. And so we at first found that difficult to keep track of characters. So we had the first one, we only showed mostly her arms and her chin. The second girl, we only showed her eyes. And the third one, we mostly showed her mouth and her hands. And we just decided that's the thing. If you can't recognize a face, what do you show? And so that's what we decided. And one of them said, "I don't care. Show me. I'm not ashamed of this." And fair, but also what you feel right now may not be what you feel forever. And once we've shown your face, we can't unring that bell. So that's what we decided to do, and it became difficult. But I feel like it was the best decision ultimately. But so now, when I say like, what did we show while they're talking? They get into some really deep stuff, and like 10 minutes of an eyeball just right there on screen, that's a lot. So that's why we decided to use that B-roll and show like, here's the city, here's her animation of her drawing of self interacting with this kind of dangerous looking snowflake thing, dangerous monster, to show because it's her own voice saying, my stepdad said we were going to the store and suddenly these other men took me away. And there was all really like that. There was never a scene of like, I was kicking and screaming. It was all like, wait, what's going on? And suddenly I was trafficked. Like it was just all that kind of that quick. So it's a powerful film. We really struggled with what to include and what not to include. We have a lot of footage that's of them saying pretty graphic things. Generally, on the average, one is most vulnerable to trafficking in middle school age, which seems so shocking. But we wanted it to be able to land, and we decided, we actually consulted with a lot of experts, and the consensus was if it's too terrifying, it will seem like a made-up thing. It'll seem like that's not even possible. So we scaled it down a little bit. We have a longer version that we've shown as that we've used for like, or made available for advocacy groups who are having that kind of conversation a little more openly. But we're pursuing educational distribution for that because we're not trying to make money on it. We want it to be shown so people understand. And so we decided to make it scary enough, but not so scary that it seemed like, that's crazy, that's somewhere else, right? So that it will land, so that young people in middle school would go, wow, that's really, I'm vulnerable to that? What are the signs? And then we can kind of open this bigger conversation. I could just hold the mic the whole time, or do you have stuff to say to me?
Nothing that's as important as what you're saying. And one thing that I did notice as well, you asked what we saw on the screen, and I'm sure many of you saw it as well. Part of it was that we only saw part of them, and the other thing is that they were in motion, right? It wasn't just the arm, it was the scratching, right? Or the working of the ring, or it was all of that energy that comes out in other ways when we're talking about hard things. And that demonstrate really graphically sort of what they were doing, right? That and their voices, but their voices are under control, which is fascinating.
We filmed these at a safe house, and so at this point they're protected. They're getting therapy and medical care, and they're working on not really just like, let's get you a job, but like, what do you want? You had your childhood stolen, so let's rewind a little bit and let you dream. And there's a beautiful art therapy program there. In fact, the director, she went and did a workshop there of a lot of art programs. And I think that's a beautiful program of not just like, okay, bad things happen, now let's get you a job, but really, what do you want? What do you dream about? And we have some of that later in the film, of several years later, talking about like, what are you doing now? And they're studying, they're doing stuff. Unfortunately, one was lost to trafficking. She never resurfaced, which we say in the film. But the other two that you saw, one of them is working on becoming a doctor, and that's really important to her because she had such a positive experience, there. You mentioned motion. As a filmmaker, I am personally obsessed with filming women's hands because it is the one part of our body that is never criticized, ever. And I love to film women's hands because in any culture, anywhere, you're pretty safe showing your hands. Even if you have to cover everything else, you're usually safe showing hands. And I didn't realize that at first until I was kind of down the road, and I realized I spent so much time when I was interviewing somebody or filming them. I had all this footage of women like making bread, doing stuff, if she was like reaching for a thing. I always even just had like a woman's hand reaching for a cup or doing a thing. And I was like, what is my deal with hands? And one day it just kind of hit me. That's why. And I love that clip, that one part where she's kind of messing with that keychain. She had a lot of anxiety. She was very nervous about being on camera and talking about it. And that particular part, she was struggling. So she started kind of fidgeting with that. And I think it was like, sorry, should I put this down? No, like do that. That's comfortable. It was like a fidget spinner, right? She kind of needed a thing. So, all right, next one. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing is a commercial. Thought I would okay, we did some heavy trafficking stuff. Let's go light. This is a commercial for like a concierge fitness and medical facility. And I show this because, so all of this, everything you're seeing, although the documentary started a long time ago, we really got into post-production during the pandemic. So everything here is from this point on is all stuff that happened in the pandemic. This commercial, the place is called Beyond, and they were really needing this commercial. They needed their video, but their space was not done yet. And it was kind of like, the longer we wait to do this, the worse it's going to be for me, because then it's going to be the scramble of post-production, because you actually need the video like way before it's open, because you need people to join, right? So this is what we came up with. It's in the raw space. It's the space. It's just not finished, as you will see. So that's an architect's rendering. That's not even real. And then that's their empty space. That's B-roll. Didn't even film
In
it.
order to be healthy and to experience true wellness these days, the world makes it very difficult on you.
This is the most unique opportunity to actually take your health, your wellness, and everything that's going on in that world and actually making it a part of your life in a more serious way.
Right, so that's a completely raw space. And I'm a big yoga person, and the guy that was doing yoga, that's my friend Zacharias, and I was like, hey man, come do some yoga. And so that's just him, and he brought his roommate, and she was doing yoga, and there they were, and they knew this other guy who does like the ropes training and all the chalk, and so he came and did a thing, and and it worked, right? It was kind of cool, dark, moody lighting in this raw space, and they didn't have to wait. And then on my side of things, it wasn't like a scramble of post-production, because okay, now the place is ready, but we need the video tomorrow. There was a little time. So part of that is working with what you have. And a lot of times in creative spaces, especially film, when you hear work with what you have, that is associated with something amateurish, and I don't think it needs to be. My good friend Stacy always says, like, if you can't fix it, feature it, which, yeah, right? So we couldn't fix it. That thing was nowhere near starting construction, and we needed that video to happen, so we featured it. Like, well, what could happen? What is possible? Well, kind of weird lighting that will highlight very fit bodies doing the thing you want them to do there. So let's just bring them in and make that happen.
I like that a lot. I like a lot of things about that. One is that what they probably had in mind was the finished product, right? Which is like this spa experience for very, very rich people to spend a lot of money to do yoga that they could do anywhere, right? And like beauty and like earth tones and white, right? Like that's what they had in mind, I'm sure, right? And you said, no, we're going to use untreated cement. We're going to use raw cement, and we're going to use open rafters, and we're going to use all these other things. And what that does is it creates a different kind of aspirational desire on the part of anyone who's watching it, right? Two things going on. One, it seems to me, is that there's a sort of authenticity. There's a feeling of authenticness that we are all always seeking. Like, sure, the beauty and the wealth, that's one kind of aspiration, but we want to be authentic, and that felt authentic, right? And the other is that it builds this narrative of sort of starting from here, which is what everyone does when they sign up for a fitness program or whatever else. You start from where you are. And that is happening in that ad without anyone even saying anything about it. It was really smart. It was really smart. No, it was really smart. Yeah.
Yes, and that was kind of the point of that ad is they needed kind of the first round of people to sign up for their like yes, very extremely fancy gym and juice bar thing, right? So, and they did it, right? And that's a good point that it did convey a sense of like cuz they were kind of asking for if you join now, it's still expensive but not as expensive. So, there is kind of this idea you're building with us, right? That I think was built into that, not even necessarily intentionally, but it came through that way, and I thought that was very cool. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you, the first year of the pandemic, Burning Man, which has been in the news lately, Burning Man, some organizers approached me and said, so we're going to do a virtual thing this year. Are you interested? And I was like, what does that mean exactly? And essentially they built like a multiverse or metaverse thing, and you would go there and you see the desert and you'd see a bunch of different little concerts happening, and you got to walk your little avatar over there to the one you wanted and experience it. And so they said, like, do a thing with music, do whatever, make a thing. And I was like, that is very vague, Burning Man people, but sure, I'll do a thing with music. So there's a DJ in Chicago, DJ Cashera, who's very awesome. And I talked with her about it and was like, hey, want to play a set at Burning Man Metaverse? And she was like, I don't know what that means. Am I getting paid? Like, how does that work? And I was like, I don't think Burning Man thinks money is real for any of us, but like, we're doing a thing. And she was like, yeah, sure, let's do a thing. So we needed to be outside because it was still early pandemic times. So this is a parking lot on the shore of Lake Michigan in Chicago. I wanted to kind of show this expansive space. And the detail that the Burning Man folks gave was like, oh, and make it like something that would be visually interesting to someone who's really tripping balls on some psychedelics. I'm like, great, I'll get right on that. We'll do that. So there's some effects that we played with and some different things. But I also art directed this just because we kind of had to do it quick and cheap and whatever. So I went to a prop rental house and I rented a bunch of vintage instruments. And then I went to a thrift store and I just bought all the vinyl records that I could and was like, I'm going to figure this out. And I got a table for the DJ to be working on and kind of made it look like there was this explosion of instruments out in every direction, right? And then I laid the records out kind of in this sunburst pattern going away from her. And I think there's a lot of cool video of the vintage instruments. And you'll see in a moment that some of the records that I bought, because I was just buying stacks of stuff, a couple of the records ended up being very, very old and when they were a lot more fragile. And I dropped one and it broke. And I was like, oh, well, actually, let's leave the pieces. It looks kind of cool. And then I was like, actually, that looked even cooler. Hang on, I'll break another one. And so with the camera kind of tilted down, I set the record and I was like barely holding it and then let it go and move my hand really fast. Let it fall to the ground and shatter and then play it in reverse in the final thing. So it looks like all the pieces like pull together and it comes back up to the sky. So there was just a lot of fun stuff that you don't often get to mess with because they were like, speak to somebody on a lot of Molly, right? And so I got to play with like a lot of colors and effects and things that you wouldn't normally get to do, which was fun. And then plus art directing is fun, which is a thing sometimes as a producer, you have an art director, but sometimes you're also just kind of there and you see a thing. And when, right before a thing, people say last looks, which is usually the makeup artist's cue to go in and fix shiny foreheads and stuff. But you also might just see a thing and be like, there's a hair at a place, or you got some in your nose or in your teeth or whatever, you'll like hop in and do a thing. But sometimes also, like if it's not in the budget to also have an art director, you just wing it and you just do it. And then sometimes you also like have an accident, like drop a record and realize that's kind of cool. And you end up with your hand kind of in a shot, you become like a stunt coordinator, right? So here's a couple of clips from the Burning Man thing. Oh, and I should say, there's a little bit of language. I apologize. I did not write the music. I did not select the music. The DJ selected it. So, okay.
You're in the mix with DJ Cash Era.
Oh, and I will also say, I got up at 2:30 in the morning so that I had time to set up to capture the actual sunset. Because that was very important to me to do. So I had one camera just rolling for hours on Lake Michigan, hours and hours and hours in the dark. So I'm in the dark in a parking lot with all these vintage musical instruments, like rolling a camera at the water. Eventually some dude walked by, like walking his dog, and he was like, "You cool?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. Doing a thing for people on Molly at Burning Man. We're good. Yeah, it's fine." Anyway, so, here's the first kind of moment where you can see some effects that are coming in.
Last night a DJ saved my life. Last night a DJ saved my life. Last night a DJ saved my life.
Right, so you see kind of the set. That's the DJ.
You're in the mix with DJ Cash Era.
So this is a record spinning on top of
Now, who's hot, who not? Tell me who rock, who sell out in the stores. You tell me who flop, who cop the blue drop, who jewels got blocks, who mostly Gucci down to the blue top. The same old pimp, Mace, you know ain't nothing changed but my limp. Can't stop till I see my name on the blimp. Guarantee me and shells full of level up. You don't believe in Harlem World, nigga, double up. We don't play around, it's a bet, lay it down. Niggas didn't know me 91, bet they know me now. I'm the young Harlem nigga with the Goldie sound. Can't no PhD, niggas hold me down. Cooler, school me to the game, now I know my duty. Stay humble, stay low, blow like...
Right, so there's that kind of like the happy accident of the record drop that I was like, oh wait, that's actually kind of cool. Let's do it again, right? And you can see kind of how I put the stuff around and all the instruments and all that kind of stuff. And it, I think, sparked a lot of creativity because I was like, what other layers can happen? So that was the idea of like getting a record spinning and then making that video kind of translucent and putting it over the thing, using a cassette tape and throwing rainbows at it until it started making your eyes spin, right? So it was like all those details that are not things you often get to play with. So it was really, this was just a fun thing to do. We did it in a day. The DJ didn't arrive till the afternoon. So again, 2:30 in the morning, y'all, to get that sunrise. And then I'm just sort of hanging out. And people are walking their dogs, and I'm waiting for the DJ. And it was they were all just like, I don't know what her deal is, but she's got some trombones sitting there. So yeah, there's that.
Oh, that's very cool. So what, on a project like this, what percentage of the budget will go to Molly?
Quite a bit.
Most of it? Yeah. Yeah, no, that was fascinating. And one of the things that it makes me think about is that, we've been living with special effects as part of our lives for so long that the automatic response when we see almost anything is, right, what's the default response is, that's fake, by which we mean someone did something to it, right? Someone manipulated a thing. And what I love about this is that it shows that there's no starting from nothing, right? Nothing is fake. Someone went to a parking lot adjacent to Lake Michigan at 2:30 in the morning and ran cameras for hours and hours and hours to have something real to manipulate with special effects, right? To create something that people at Burning Man will walk into posts about or whatever they do, right? Yeah.
And so then I had to go see it, right? So like you walk into the Burning Man universe, and indeed it was a desert, and you figure out the one. I was like, hey, there it is. And I like walk down there, and you see your little, avatar hands. It's just like the metaverse, and you just like see your little avatar hands running down there, and then you're like looking at the other people that are there, And eventually somebody sent out a note that was like, put a green wristband on your avatar if indeed you are on psychedelics. And so when you get there, you like have your avatar wave, because I think there was, people didn't want to mess with, like, don't mess with people wearing a green wristband because they may be having an experience of some kind, right? But also, like, it's virtual. Maybe step back a little bit from the thing if you're having a really great experience on your psychedelics, whatever. But it was really interesting. And like the Burning Man folks, I'm sure perhaps you've read it. If not, Google it. There's like a 10 or 12, like the ethos of Burning Man kind of, here are the rules of the road here. And they were kind of like, try to embody that on your film set. So don't spend money, make money not real. Try to do it with like trading stuff. Didn't really work. I didn't have trombones sitting around. I had to rent them. But it was an interesting exercise of just like, what can we kind of pull together here really quickly to do just for the sake of joy, just for the sake of people keeping with a tradition that people really love, even a tradition that I don't know anything about. I had never been to Burning Man, still have not. Probably a lot of people may not now after this week. Things have gone kind of south for them this week. But it was a cool experience. It was really interesting. And it was one of those, like, when I got approached about it, I was like, my gut reaction was like, well, no, I don't know anything about Burning Man. But then I was like, well, I'm going to say yes and figure it out and see what happens. And so that became a cool exercise in something I said, I guess. But that became a cool exercise just in like, how can this happen quickly, easily, and without spending a lot of money? Because that's the whole thing of like, make it not capitalism for a minute. And how can that happen? And interestingly, like the editor worked for free on it because he was just like, that's kind of cool. I'm in on the Burning Man thing. I'll do a thing, right? Not that it was like, not that it was like, yay, I didn't pay a person, but it was like he wanted to. He was in on the idea, and he was like, oh, I'm totally for this. I'm on board with it. So that was Burning Man.
That's awesome. The other thing that it makes me think is that the job of producer is just like figuring it out. Like that literally is what the job, like whatever it is that needs figuring out. And I thought about that in the Burning Man comes to you and it's a desert thing and it's virtual, but it's a desert, and so there has to be a desert. I think most of us would be like, I'm in Chicago and there's no desert, so you need to find somebody else. And instead, a producer is like, what's the central idea of a desert? It's like expansiveness and featurelessness, and what do I have in Chicago that can do that? I can either show the grass at Soldier Field, or I can show Lake Michigan and a parking lot, like featureless, and then I populate it with the things that I want, like virtual Burning Man is populated by avatars, most of whom have green wristbands. That's right. Very cool. Very cool. Thanks.
All right, so now we're going to see Elvis of the Yukon, which I just submitted to Sundance 2 days ago. Please, thank you. Now, they haven't made a decision. They're not going to tell me the deal till December 4th, so it's not like I'm going to be constantly refreshing my inbox until between now and then, but I totally will. But it was a deadline I was working against because we've been in post-production. We just filmed this in May. I was the only producer on it, and post-production is a long process. So we were working backwards from the Sundance deadline. And this was the last deadline for shorts. This is a short film. And it was midnight on the 4th. If you don't have it turned in by midnight on the 4th, we'll see you next year. So it was like down to the wire on that. The story of Elvis of the Yukon, though, is a fun one. So for those of you who maybe were here yesterday, I talked about the script, The Same River Twice. I interviewed a travel writer when I was doing talk radio, and immediately on the air, we were just good friends. She's very funny, and we had a great time together. And she lives in Seattle. I was doing radio in Chicago. And she had a book come out, and it was a memoir. And I read it, and I interviewed her about that book, and right away said, yo, this should be a screenplay. This is so visual and so cool, and it's such a powerful story. And we ended up collaborating on that. And then as we began, that's a feature film, and as we began to shop that around, because it has something like 17 countries in it. Like, we're going to need more than $5 to make that thing. So we have to, we're having a lot of conversations with people about that. But while we're in that process, I said, here's the thing. The question you're going to get a lot is, what else you got? Because anybody throwing serious money at a production wants to know that you're a good investment. They want to know, hey, I'm the one who discovered this person and plucked them out of obscurity. They've got all these other films, so this is a great investment. So of course I'll fund their film, right? So I was like, so think about it, dude. You should be writing some other stuff. And she's a travel writer. She's an award-winning travel writer. So she had all this great stuff. And she sent me a couple of things. And there was this one story about a road trip in which she met an Elvis impersonator. That turns out the guy is quite Googleable. He is the guy in Alaska, also kind of a con man, and like on the record in that kind of way. And she had this interaction with him, and she was with her friend, and her friend was going through a bad breakup and nursing some heartache and all of this, and they're on this road trip. So she just kind of captured this one moment in time. And I like it that it's not a romance. There's a guy and a girl in a car. They do not sleep together. They do not fall in love. They just have an experience. And like, no one falls in love. And I think so many times you have this like really positive story with a woman in it. And it's like, and then she found love, which is fine. Find your love. But like, sometimes also you just need to have your experience, right? And so there was a lot of producer challenges with this. The first, essentially, it was kind of like thrown at me like this once we knew we were moving forward on it. Okay, we need a laundromat connected to a car wash. It needs to look like Alaska. You need an Alaskan husky who can act on cue. You need a plane that looks like it would be in Alaska. You also need the same plane, identical plane, to fly around in Alaska to film the Northern Lights. You need a full airport that looks like it could be in Alaska. Also, you need a 70s vintage Cadillac and an Elvis suit. I got it. No problem. And my thing as a producer, I love to solve movie problems. I love to. I love when people are like, so how could we get a moose on the set? Like, I'll figure it out. I will figure out how to get a moose here, whatever. I got all of those things to happen in the Kitsap Peninsula, which is basically across the bay, just west of Seattle, in Bremerton and Belfair. There are not a lot of car washes connected to laundromats. But I found one that was very cute. And the woman that owned it was really a character. While we were filming, I said, if you want to be an extra, because we bought out her laundromat. One of the days we filmed outside, one of the days we filmed inside. So we bought out her laundromat for that day. And I said, if you want to be an extra, come on in. And she declined, but she did come by that day just to see what was happening. And she was done up. She was, I don't know. I think she's probably maybe in her 70s, but she was like all done up. And like this like slinky little outfit, and she had her cat with her. And I was like, oh, you're so dressed up. And she's like, I'm on my way to get new Tinder pictures taken. And I was like, get it. Yes, ma'am, you are. Yeah, she was quite a character. Loved her very much, but she was open to the idea. She was like, when I first found the laundromat, I found it on Google Maps, and I just like looked at the street view, and I was like, this is gonna work. So I drove out there. I was in Seattle at the time. I was actually house sitting for my co-screenwriter because Chicago winters are terrible. She travels, then I go to her house. It's a deal we have. And so I drove out there, and I saw this laundromat, and I just walked in, and I said, hey, I'm a film producer. I think this spot might be really kind of perfect. Are you open to that? And she was like, am I? I love this idea. She goes, I lived in Hollywood in the 70s. I saw some things. And I was like, yes, ma'am, you did. She was really spectacular. She was very fun and totally cool. We had a couple of, like, could I say a bad word? That's fine, I can say it. Because I need to quote a person, right? So we're filming. The day that we were outside, the laundromat is still open. So customers could come through, and it was the only one in town. So people needed their laundry. So we didn't just want to close it for 2 days and inconvenience people. So we were filming outside, which you're going to see in a minute. And we have production assistants kind of holding traffic so no one's driving through a shot. And these two women pull up in like an SUV, and they're very, very drunk at 11 o'clock in the morning. And they are very mad because they really want to do their laundry. Wasted. And they're like making a scene. So we say cut and we see what their deal is. And we're like, if you give us 5 minutes, you can go in and just do your laundry and it'll be all cool. And so she agrees, she calms down, and but she's loud, like angry about some stuff. And finally she gets out, she's doing her laundry. We were using the corner of the interior for hair and makeup and costume. So the makeup artist is in there like touching up the Elvis, and this woman's like, and the guy, as you will see in this clip, he's not playing Elvis, he's playing an Elvis impersonator who doesn't really look like Elvis, right? So this guy is like a blonde dude. He doesn't look anything like Elvis. And this woman is like, is that a fucking Elvis? And I was like, that's, and I start telling her the story, you know, what the deal is. And she is like, no. And she's like, and it's set here. And I was like, well, actually it's set in Alaska, but you know, this is a kind of wooded area. So it's sort of looking like it. And she's like doing her laundry for the next couple of hours, but with like this running monologue just to herself, just like grumbling about stuff. And I walk in and she's like, she goes, again, forgive the bad words, I'm quoting her. She goes, them motherfuckers don't even know they ain't in fucking Alaska. Just like bitching, just like on and on and on and on. This woman just like in this gravelly, I have smoked 2 packs of Camels a day for 50 years kind of voice. And I'm drunk at 11 in the morning doing my laundry, just like rambling for days and days and days. She leaves. Finally, she's like, bye, bitches, and just leaves. We have that on tape, actually, because she just like walked through a shot. The PA tried to stop her, and she's like, I gotta go, and just leaves. She was fascinating. Shout out to the people of Belfair, Washington. They were amazing. So the first thing I want to show you is a simple shot. This is from the very opening. And again, I just got this clip, so it doesn't have the opening credits on it. This is like the newer copy before we put that on there. But a lot of things get cued. You're going to see the laundry. I think this is maybe seconds before we start hearing our friend yelling about not being in Alaska. So she's kind of off camera at this point. So we're cueing a car to drive through the shot. You'll see the laundry and the car wash. There is a dog. I had to find an Alaskan Husky. Her parents went on their first date to a production of Fiddler on the Roof, so her name is Tika Anatevka, after the village. She was a very fancy lady, that dog, and so hair and makeup had to rough her up, and she did not like it. That dog was not, she like is fancy. She gets blowouts, like she's fancy. And so she was well trained. And so, you know, those of you who've been on a set, you know, it'll be like roll sound speed, and then action, right? And I was trying to tell her person, you know, maybe when you hear like roll speed, cue her to lay down. And I said that in front of the dog, and she goes, she heard, it's fine. I was like, haha, you're a crazy dog person. No, the dog did know. And so sure enough, I like had her person off by the side of the camera, roll sound, and the dog was like, and she sat down. And then the minute the director yelled cut, she got up and was like, and like fixing her hair and doing a thing. She did not like being scruffed up at all. So you'll see the dog cross that you now know is kind of a diva, but it was lovely. That's her person walking her. And you will see like the effects of a PA holding traffic just to get this one shot of a car to drive through. It's also, because we were doing this on a relatively tight budget, we spent more than we meant to on the vintage Cadillac. Not meant to, but we ended up being more. So the car that you will see drive through is the screenwriter's car. She was like, just use mine, it's fine. Because the script calls for like a beat up hatchback. And she's like, well, why not use the car that literally did that road trip? So this is it. So all that went into that. And what that means for the producer is to go have that conversation with Jackie, getting her Tinder pictures, right? But also she needed to sign a location release, and she needed to figure out, what does it cost to close my business for the day? What's that going to mean? It meant talking to the person who owned that strip mall, that property manager. Can we film in your parking lot? The car wash may or may not have been a money laundering operation. So I never really got a straight answer on that, but I was like, we're not really showing that much of it. Let's just do this. And like, honestly, that's kind of part of the call, right? That's not ideal, but on some level, in good faith, I tried to reach that person. And our friend at the laundry, right, when she wasn't taking her Tinder pictures, she was like, I don't even think he lives here. He's like in a foreign country. I think it's an operation. Just do it, honey. Just do it. And I was like, I am not going to tell the director that, but I'm going for it. Yes, this is what's happening. Later, and like after we wrapped, I was like, and you know what's so funny? It's like, I never even talked to the car wash guy. It's fine. It's fine. So we don't show a lot of the car wash, but you see, right? That dog was cued. That was the owner walking the dog, but that just looks like a casual moment, but all that stuff went into it, right? You had to find the location, get those location releases, ask them, what does it cost to close your business for the day? Find who owns the property that your business is on. You have to get the car to do it. And that actor who drove the car, he didn't drive a stick, and it's a stick, so he had to practice. So he borrowed his friend's car for weeks leading up to it, and maybe had to replace the transmission because he kind of blew it out learning. But he had to drive it to get there. So, it like so much goes into it. And then also it's Washington, and like, what's Seattle known for? Rain. So I was like, I really need it to be an okay day because it's in the script that a car gets washed. So if it starts to rain, we need to rewrite everything. And so the screenwriter was on set, and she had an alternative of, they were going to make a joke like, man, every time you wash your car, it rains. Like, in case it started to rain, she had this other, script ready to go. But you can see, like, even for a second, so much goes into that. The second piece is, so the script said they do laundry. That was the stage action. They do laundry. And meanwhile, this character, the guy, is heartbroken and antsy, and he really wants to hear from the girl who's literally never going to call him again. And his traveling companion is kind of sick of his shit, right? And just kind of having her experience. And so this is what They Do Laundry looks like on a screen. Okay, so the guy in the background, I don't know if you noticed, the background actor was like folding laundry. That was the set medic. That guy is so fascinating. To be compliant with SAG-AFTRA rules, you have to have a COVID officer on set. And this guy is local to Washington. It was important to me to hire local crew. And everyone said, like, hire this guy, Andy. I'm like, great. So I find Andy. And I said, hey, I hear you're the guy to call to be a set medic. And he's like, yeah, I was an EMT, and now I'm retired, and I just like movie people. They're cool. I was like, okay, cool. That guy was a very valuable person, because part of it is you got to build that team. He knows everybody, this guy. He was also fascinating. He's a pilot. He knew all these folks, right? So he became a good connector and kind of this local fixer, because he was able to say, a lot of people are going to maybe say this person, hire this, do that. He helped me build a really strong team of people because I told him right off the bat, it's really important to me. I want the best people, but I also want people with a great attitude. It's really important to me. I don't work with assholes. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. I don't want your bad vibe on the set. And so that was really important. And once I made that clear to him, he was like, yeah, right on. But the way that I found him was in solving the airport and plane problem. I emailed a local flight club, and I just said, hey, found you on Google, making a movie, need a pilot. And I started with that because I figured that'd be the hardest part. And he's on the board of the Pilots Association. And he wrote me back. They kicked it to him, and he was like, oh, and I'm a Sept medic, and also this. And, he's fascinating. When you register your Sept medic with SAG-AFTRA union, you have to show their medical credentials. And I was like, sorry, Andy, can you just shoot me a little resume? I just have to show them that you're certified to do this. And he goes, no, it's fine. I'm used to it. And he sends me this resume. He is certified. If the space capsule falls off of the Washington coast, he is certified to go fetch the astronauts. And I was like, hey, man, why are you on this set? What are you doing? And he was like, I love movie people. And I love to connect movie people. And he was so helpful that even if at one point Elvis's shoe fell apart, the shoe we had rented for him, because there's a line about the shoes. We need a particular kind of shoes. And he's like, hang on. And he goes home and gets his own shoes. Because he's like, I got a pair just like that. And gave us his shoes. He's that guy. So we're in this laundry. And as you can see, it's excellent and campy in all the right ways. And we realized the windows, because you saw that line of shirts in the shot, right? And you see laundry, and you see him in the back folding laundry. We needed something going on. It just looked too empty. And so that was kind of a, hey, producer, get an extra. And my guy, Andy, I was like, hey, do you know anyone who you could call? Just he's like, I do it. Okay. But if someone gets hurt on set, I'm going to need you to prioritize that. And so he's back there folding a towel. And we decide, because it's a working strip mall, there's other businesses, we can see too many cars going through by the windows. So we decide to cover them with a clothing rack and hang some shirts on there. We don't have enough of them. And a lot of people on the set had, I had a flannel in my purse and I had a hoodie and whatever. We hung those up. But he's like, hang on, I've got a thing. And he calls his wife, and his lovely wife, Rebecca, drives up with all of their actual dirty laundry. So the laundry that you saw going in the washer, we did his laundry. We're like, Rebecca, you drove it all down the mountain. The least we can do is do your actual laundry for you. So that's Andy and Rebecca's underwear or whatever in the washer. And he's back there folding the clean stuff as it worked out. So he was actually doing laundry as all that was happening. But it's important to have those kind of connectors on set, right? He knew all of those local people, and he knew, and I said, I was even hearing names and checking them with him. And he was like, there may have been some kind of an abrasive guy. Go to somebody else. He was straight with me, and I appreciate that, right? Because awful people or problematic people don't exist in a void. People say yes to them over and over and over because they do good work. And it matters when someone's willing to say yeah, that person is really good, but they're a problem. That's valuable, right? So that was my guy in the background doing his laundry, also solving problems and keeping HR out of the thing, right? Okay, let's see. Where are we going to go next? We're going to go to, and again, I'm hogging the mic. Take it from me anytime you want. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess just one question about that. On a production like this, what percentage of the budget goes to Molly? Is it
way more than Burning Man?
Okay, cool.
Way more, yeah. We did expense some chicken for the dog because the person was like, she needs little shredded chicken. So we had a grocery store next door and got the little rotisserie chicken and had a PA, can you go feed the dog her chicken break? She needs. Nobody had a trailer. It wasn't that fancy, right? But yeah, the dog had handlers. It was fine. The actors, by the way, that's Liz Pleasant. She's based in Seattle and Los Angeles. The guy is Andrew Wing. He's based in Chicago. The woman behind the counter at the laundry, she was amazing. That's Carol Sage Silverstein. The auditions were over Zoom because that's how they happen now. And at the audition, I think it's compelling to ask them stuff. Like anybody can read and sound good, but also, who are you? What's your deal? Why are you in this? And so I was reading the lines with the actors, so the director and the screenwriter could just kind of listen. And but I was also kind of setting it up and welcoming them into the Zoom and asking them some initial questions. And everybody that was reading for that part of the laundry attendant, because as you'll see in a minute, she needed to be kind of sassy, salty broad, you know. Everybody that read for that part, the question I asked them was like, what's a day job that you had that you found really boring? And what did you do? And I was looking for someone to say something like, you know, I answered phones at this place, but I read a lot, or I wrote my dissertation, or whatever. She goes, well, I was a waitress in Brooklyn, and I hated it, and the day that I quit, I punched my boss in the face. And I was like, I wish to join your cult, madam. I was like, and the screenwriter and I, like in the Zoom way you look at somebody, right? Like both of us went. Like both of us knew right away, oh man, I don't know if we're gonna cast her or not yet because she hasn't read, but I like her immensely, right? So so that was her. So the next thing that you're gonna see the Cadillac, the vintage Cadillac. The way that I found that was that I started calling car clubs. And that's really, I think, how you solve any producer problem. And I think that's part of a thing I bring as a journalist of just, you know, if you're going to report a story, you go, who would I call for comment on that? Who knows a thing about that? And you start making that conversation. And so when I needed a vintage Cadillac, I called a car museum. I started calling car collectors. They're not really like listed on Google. They're just private individuals. So then I started calling car clubs. Like, you know, you see those meetups and suddenly like a parking lot is just taken over with a certain kind of car. Those folks are on Facebook and they are passionate folks. Sometimes you can't even get into their group because you got to answer very specific questions about like carburetors that I don't know. But some of them you can just join and look around. So I started posting and asking and calling, and everybody said, this guy, Robert, I heard lots of Cadillacs. That was the lots of. Turns out he has 41 vintage vehicles, 25 of which are Cadillacs. My question to him was, what do you do when you're going to the grocery store? And he was like, oh, I have a 2015 Jetta for that. I'm cool. Like, he's not going to drive the awesome Cadillac. So he was like, yeah, I would love to do that. And he sent me pictures of this car, which you'll see in a minute, that's very beautiful, and a couple of other ones. And he was like, yeah, I'm in. But he was so excited to be part of it. He showed up. He filled the trunk of it with donuts for a set. That trunk is the size of like a queen-size bed. It's huge. So it was like a lot of donuts he showed up with. But anyway, here's this clip. Shoes.
Hello, darling. Need the caddy washed.
$6, do it yourself. 10 if you want the guy to do it.
Punch your boss in the face.
I'm wearing white.
$10 it is.
So if you notice, there was like the 2001 Space Odyssey song going on as like Muzak in the laundry room. Tony Scott Green he wrote the score for this film, and he wanted to play with that. He was very excited to like give a nod to the way Elvis used to enter in concert. So he played with that for this entrance. So as you can see, like that guy did not look like Elvis Presley, right? He's playing an Elvis impersonator, and he wasn't trying to. So some people came to the audition and they were like doing the thank you very much. Like, we're like, no, you're an Elvis impersonator on your day off. Like, you're in costume, but you're not, an Elvis impersonator is not going to go to 7-Eleven and be like, being an Elvis, right? So you're just going to walk in there and be a guy. So for the most part, we just, had him be like that. I went to pick up the Elvis outfit. There's a picture on my Instagram of me wearing it, because you don't go pick up an Elvis outfit and not put it on, right? So I totally put it on. The screenwriter, Pam, came with me. I'm 5'10", she's 5'2". So then she put it on, and we had to like cuff the, bottoms for her. But it was fun to put the Elvis thing on. The guy playing Elvis had followed me on Instagram before production started. So I think his comment was like, I see. Like, he was just kind of like, why are you in my costume? What's going on? And then, because I think he thought I was like a tiny little woman. And he was like, can I wear this? And I was like, don't worry, dude, I'm freakishly tall. It's fine. So you see the Cadillac kind of come in over her shoulder. That was the day that we closed the laundromat, which, by the way, it's $700 to close a laundromat for a day. The reason she came up with that number, she didn't know off the top of her head. She said, I need to count the quarters. It's a quarters business. So that was her answer that day that I came in. I said, we want to film 2 days, but if I understand if you just want to close one day, we'll buy you out. But, what does it cost to close your business? She goes, I have no idea. Let me count quarters. And she came back and she said, it was about 700. It might be less. And I was like, we can call it 7. That's okay. We'll pay you for it. It's fine. It's good. And so that was her laundromat. And we left all the signs up in there for the most part. I think there was one that had like a phone number on it that we did cover with a thing, because we didn't want that person prank called for the rest of their lives, But also it's set in Alaska but filmed in outside of Seattle, so we, wanted that detail there. But that began the Elvis. I think that's all I have to say about that particular part. Yes. And the role of just like what music can do, and that, this composer was willing to come on and do that, and to give him free reign. Like, the screenwriter had some ideas about what she wanted, and she told me, and then she was like, did you tell Tony what I wanted? And I was like, no, I did not. Not only is it like not the screenwriter's job to music direct, but also I wanted to see what the composer would do. Like, that's his thing. That's his jam. So it was like, what's he going to do with it? And I would have never come up with give a nod to the way Elvis entered concerts in the 70s. And he came up with that as like overhead music, which was fun. So the next thing we're going to see, raise your hand if you know what a process trailer is. Awesome. Okay. A process trailer is like a stage on wheels. It's pulled by a big tow truck that can do 2 things. It can make a little balcony so that a camera person can go backwards and film at a car that's driving towards them. Or you can hook up the stage to it. And it looks like a flatbed when a car is towed, right? Not towed just by the front, but like the whole thing's on a truck, but with about 3 feet on every side of it. So you can set up lights and cameras and stuff so that you can, as an actor, you can focus on driving and not, or focus on acting and not like, do I still remember how to drive a stick? So we got the process trailer. And that became another producer problem because there is one guy in Washington State with a process trailer. There's 1,500 in Los Angeles. There is one dude in Washington. And so I was like, well, I got to get him. Can't negotiate that much with that guy. He's the only guy and he knows it. His name is Rick Wiley. If you need him, he's very nice. So I'm going to show you, this is a shot, a simple shot of the 2 people on the road trip in the screenwriter's car being passed by the Cadillac and waving. That seems very simple. We've driven, we know what that looks like in our lives. But to get that, we had a couple of shots, one in which they're actually driving and passing each other. The truck with the camera guy on it is in front, and this is happening back here. And then we did it again with the process trailer so we could get the actors talking as it's happening. So this is several takes just to get this kind of one moment. And after that, I will show you what the process trailer looks like and my view. I was sitting in the process trailer with the guy, Rick Wiley, the only guy with the process trailer in Washington. I was in the process trailer with him watching on a monitor so that I could, and they had my voice in the follow car so that I could be talking on walkie-talkie to everybody running a camera. So there's like a lot going on. And we had a walkie-talkie in the car with the actors so that they could hear when action and cut happened. So a lot's going on there.
Elvis in Alaska. How crazy is that?
So that's the process trailer, right? So just that simple thing, right? That was that's the process trailer. That's what that looks like. So you can see it's like a stage with, and again, that's the screenwriter's car strapped to this stage on wheels. And it's driven by this tow truck. The thing behind the tow truck with the little gate around it, that is, I think, what we're going to see next. And that's where the camera is. I think it's next. Yep. So that's what's next with it not hooked up to the stage on wheels. That's Billy. He's the Steadicam op. That guy, you basically wear a Steadicam. It's like attached to you. So he really got to work out. I have no idea who's behind him. That's Tara. She's doing the sound mix. And then that's Mike Quilford, the director of photography, just screwing around, not being on task, taking pictures. So I'm sitting in the bed of that truck, or I'm sitting in the truck, cueing everybody as all this is happening. So we do it like 3 or 4 times like that, and then we do it again with the car attached. So it's so many takes, and you saw that was just like seconds, right? Just seconds and seconds. But I also want to tell you about where we're filming. We had a highway. We had a permit for a highway, very pretty, covered in moss, pretty, Pacific Northwest stuff. And a phone pole fell the night before, and they were going to not be able to do that. They were like, sorry, we got to fix it because, power to people is more important than your film. Fair enough. So I quickly needed another highway. And the people at the airport that we ended up renting were so lovely, and also were like, no, use it for free. We want to be part of this. We're so on board with what you're doing. I was like, are you joking? Great. But they knew they were another one of those like connectors, like my guy Andy. And I called them and I was like, do you don't have any, is there like a practice runway? They go, oh, there's a racetrack behind the airport. Do you want it? I do. So all this is a racetrack, and you will see that in the next shot, because this is what I took with my phone. That's my view. I'm in the truck. So you see in front of me, that's a racetrack. They do drag racing there. And we made it look like a highway. So it's another kind of example of like work with what you have. And that's my view. And you can see, so there's off to the side, if you look at my monitor there, you can see the bumpers where people, like literal race cars, crash into that. But we just framed it so it wasn't, in there. Okay, let me see what's next.
I'm not mad. Honestly. Kind of get it.
I don't know what to say.
You're on your trip, and I'm on mine. Mine is just a lot slower. And it has more Elvis.
A little bit longer stretch because there's a lot of elements. So we also got shots just driving in the car with the camera.
Wait, that's the plane?
Oh, yeah.
I want to stop this for a second. So this is Bremerton Airport on the Kitsap Peninsula. The extras that you see in the glass, the one right over the gate agent's shoulder is me. The person in the purple hat is the screenwriter. The guy in the blue jacket is the CEO of the airport. And that guy was like, I want to know how every single piece of equipment works. I need to know everything. He was so excited to be there. His son is an extra in an earlier scene in the car wash. He like wipes off the car. And then that person next to him is the makeup artist. So we're kind of working with what we had at that point. It was kind of getting late. We had a lot of shots because of all the process trailer and all the car stuff took a while. So this was the last shot. But I'm going to let this play for a minute because I want to show you a cool thing about the plane.
These things are workhorses.
Do I get like a scarf and a leather helmet? Maybe some goggles?
You'll be fine. You have a great flight and come visit us again soon.
Oh, I will. I actually still need to see the Northern Lights, so I'll be back for that.
You never know.
All right. So we saw her take off. You see them in the air doing a thing. But here's the thing to know. The insurance company said, if that actress is on the plane when it takes off, we are not covering you. So we had it go a little bit. And I was like, kindly get off the plane, Liz. Thank you. She got off the plane. Then we had we had Ken take off. Ken is a stunt pilot. There's a video on YouTube of him doing like the biplane thing, and he has a wing walker out there who falls off and is hanging onto a wheel, and he drops that person in the bed of a pickup truck and flies away and does some loops. He's a lot. That guy is very talented. But so he's the pilot, and so he can't take off with the actress, but we need that shot. So what are we going to do? We're just going to film it on the ground. So what does that look like, and how do you make it look like it's in the air? This is what we did. That's Andy. The set medic, standing by. Now watch the wings. Puts his hand up. Andy walks away. He's like, I can't watch this. Right? So let's watch it. And let's see that part again, knowing what it looks like behind the scenes. Shaky shake. Shaky shake, right? So that's a lot of stuff that I threw at you, but it's all kind of a matter of like working with what you have. Like, what is at my disposal? What can I do? And I think one of the biggest secrets of producing is don't say yes to any project that you're not super excited about. I think that's like with any creative project, because especially with producing, you have to get people excited to say yes. And that was Jackie the laundry lady, right? Yeah. What? A movie? Yes. I was in Hollywood in the 70s. I saw some things. She's on board quickly. But also, I needed a pilot. I needed that plane. Like, Ken is a big deal and in high demand. Hey, you want to do our movie? And he was like, what? And I explain it. What's it about? And I tell them the plot. Oh, it's about this road trip and this woman is finding herself. She meets she meets an Elvis. Elvis? And suddenly he's on board, right? And it was a matter of like telling the story to people, getting them involved, making them feel like they were part of a thing. And even though some of it was transactional, like I want to buy out your business for the day, that's fine. She was excited about it. She came by, everybody was so lovely. I mean, the airport folks could not have been nicer. The nicest people in the world. I was like, we should give them like the biggest credits because like they should be producers or something. They're so nice. And I told actually one of the people at the airport, I was like, if you ever do not want to be in this industry, you would be an excellent producer. Because he's like what can I solve? How can I fix it? He had that naturally occurring in him. And hey, I don't have a highway. What can I do? I'm just going to tell people I need something that looks like an Alaskan highway. What do you got? We got a racetrack surrounded by trees. Great. I'm going to make it work. And we're going to figure that out. And I was back there on FaceTime with the director and the DP, the director of photography. Will this work? Is this good? Like showing them the thing. Yeah, we'll move over there. Great. And it worked out, right? So it's a matter of like working with what you have and finding a way to say yes, because directors and actors and screenwriters will throw all these big ideas at you, and we need an Alaskan Husky that can act. I'll figure it out, and you do. And the way I figured it out was right down the strip mall from the the laundry was a vet's office. And I walked in and I said, is there a very good girl or very good boy that could maybe sit and stay on cue? And they were like, Tika Anatevka, we'll call her. And they knew the dog. So it was a matter of just, here's what I'm doing. And it's exciting. And that's how you get people on board. I just talked so much. Please take this from me.
That was fantastic. A couple of things there. One was that the movement of the wing was everything, right? It looks like they're sitting on the runway still, unless the plane does the thing. It has to do the thing, or they're not in the air, right? That's the only way for that shot to work, is for there to be movement. How are you going to do that? Is the camera guy just going to run with them? No, that's not going to work. Right. So there's that, and there's also the other thing that I've been thinking about throughout this whole conversation is that producing is solving problems, and it's getting rid of obstacles. And a lot of times those problems are physical. You need a dog, you need a plane, you need a moose. And a lot of times they're interpersonal, right? A lot of times the screenwriter wants to tell the person who's writing the music what they want to feel. And you have to be reminding kind of everybody, everyone else on this job knows what they're doing also. Like, you're the screenwriter because you're really good at that. We hired somebody really good to write the music, and we're going to let them do that, right? They didn't say the line exactly the way I wanted. Well, let them find their way to the right reading of that line. Let them find their way to trust the actors. They're good at acting. That's why we brought them on, right? So sort of protecting everyone on the set from everyone else and letting everyone get their good work done. Like you're saying at the beginning. I mean, it's interpersonal. You're taking the shots so that the other person doesn't have to.
Yeah, well, it's when you gas up those cars and give everybody an awesome playlist at the beginning, you have to keep doing that. You don't just go like, off you go. You're like, I'm here to support you doing your best creative work. And I will continue to do that while we're on this journey. I am your pit crew. I got you. If you've got problems, come to me. So on a set, I walk around constantly. Some producers just kind of hang back. Come get me if you need me. I'll be in the production office. I do not. I walk around and I constantly check with every person. Do you need water? Are you good? Do you need a break? Can I get you anything? What do you need right now? Are you hydrated? Are you warm enough? Are you cold enough? I just like walk. I make the rounds and ask people. And at first, the first round of a new production, everybody's like, I'm good. And then they realize you will get it for them. You know, you will help them. And sometimes then people start telling you like, I need a tampon. I got you, right? I need some caffeine. I got you. And then you start hearing from people like, you know what? 6 people just asked me for caffeine, and you go tell the director, hey, I think people need a break. They're kind of dragging a little bit. 6 people just want coffee. Give them a minute, right?
That's excellent. All right, we are well into time, and I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions from you all. I did have one question for you first, which was not about Molly. A lot of people need a producer, right? There are directors who have projects that they want to do, they need a producer. There are screenwriters who want to get their thing, they need a producer. There are money people who are like, we are ready to make this thing happen, but we need a producer. How do you decide which project to do? Like, how do you know what's worth committing to? And could you sort of describe that feeling when you know?
With anything, a creative process is a process. So it's got to be someone you feel like you can trust or learn to trust. I have to feel like I generally like the people involved, right? I'm not going to be like, you seem terrible. Yeah, but your script seems great. I'm not going to do that. I think it's really important you create that positive environment by working with people you like. But not always the same people. I think sometimes people get in a comfort zone and only work with like their BFF over and over and over again, and I don't think that's useful. I think it is useful to continue to work with other people. But it's got to be a project you really believe in, because I got to tell you, post-production is hard, and it's tedious. It's very tedious. You will watch your film 748 times from start to finish, and you will watch another 1,000 times of every single clip of it. Because there's like, what about this transition? What about this? And you'll watch that over and over and over and over. And you've got to believe in that project so much, or you're going to be like, I don't care, just pick a thing, right? And often the producer is the person that's kind of called on that, because the director might get in a place of being like, I can't see the forest for the trees, or they're like, nah, they're overwhelmed or something. And, the editor might just be like, I just want to get done. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so the producer's got to kind of hang on to that initial vision of the team and say, well, you really wanted to make a point to always show this character in an expansive way and this person in a shrinking way. Does this solve that? And often you solve that with a question to the creative team. But to me, I won't say yes to a project that I'm like, unless I really believe. I mean, I've really got to believe in it. I've worked on stuff that, had some challenging moments to it. I've worked with some directors that were challenging. I've worked with some directors that were pretty green and inexperienced and like threw me a lot of curveballs because they weren't really confident. And in that way, I like also maybe was a little bit of a therapist sometimes. And that's fine. But the way I solved that was just, you're the director. I'm here to clear obstacles. I think I've said that with every director I've worked with. You're the director. It's your vision. I'm here to clear the obstacles. And I don't think you can do that and keep doing that unless you really believe in the project. And you have to be able to say, we have a great film. It's good. Because at the end, everybody's going to be like, is this even good? I don't even remember. Is this a comedy? I don't even know. Because they've also watched it 700 times. And so part of it is you got to keep that energy going for people when they're running low on it, for sure.
Thank you. And I will open it to the floor now if there are any of you that have questions, anything that you would like to know.
That hand went right up. Yeah, great question. So in journalism, I started adapting some of my reporting to video because I was seeing people I was interviewing make these long pauses that were really powerful. And maybe they were like trying not to cry, or maybe they were thinking of a thing or struggling or whatever. And I was like, that long pause said a million things on their faces. So I was making these little videos of interviewing them also. And I was releasing them separately. And that got me interested in adapting work because I was kind of adapting my own work. But making those videos was very exciting to me. That was really fun. And then working in broadcast, I was around a lot of people doing a lot of producing and just really liked that. And I realized I was good at solving those kind of problems. The same part of my brain, I think, that makes me do good work as a reporter is I think has supported me in producing, because it's a matter of solving problems. If there's a crime committed, you go to the crime scene and you start asking people questions. What did you see? What happened? What's the official police statement? There's the bereaved. Let's go talk to them. What happened? And you just start asking questions and you start piecing things together. And I think producing's no different. And I think part of that is like, I was that kid. Why? Right. I think like part of that curiosity does that too. But that was really kind of my path in that it was not a decision really. It was like, this is a very natural path. This path is open and it seems like a very natural fit. Yeah.
Another question or two?
I know I said a lot of stuff, so I probably like answered them all. It's all good. Well, I'm on all the social platforms, and if you think of something later, find me and just ask. It's all good. These things are conversations, and I'm happy to talk about this kind of stuff all day. So. Oh, I didn't see. I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand behind. I'm sorry. 100%. Yeah. So this film was completed before the actors' strike, so that was fine. The writer's strike started the last day of filming. So the screenwriter sat down. And we supported her, and nobody asked her to do anything. And she wanted to be on set, so we weren't like, get off of set. She wanted to be there, and we wanted her there. And so she sat down, and she didn't do writer things. And we were all happy to support her in that. At one point, we thought about a name change, and that involves filing paperwork with the union. And so we decided not to even pursue that because that would be a thing. So I have worked on a production in that time since the strike started that has a SAG waiver. So, you know, when you go to do a film, you apply to SAG-AFTRA and you become a signatory, like officially designated production. They say, okay, you check all the boxes, you can proceed. So they were offering waivers for a time. So the only thing I've worked on has been under a waiver. I support the strike. You know, the last time both unions were on strike together was in the 60s, and it was over reruns because that was the new Wild West thing. And people were like, hey, I made this show and you're going to show 700 million episodes of Happy Days. I should be getting paid for it because I was on it. And it's really, if you look at some of the reporting at the time about those two strikes, you're like, this is literally the same thing. It was just about reruns and now it's about streaming. One of the most powerful things I've read about the strike that I've sent to people that have questioned it, you know, a friend of mine was kind of like, people should be happy they're in the most amazing industry in the world. Fair. But also, there's a New Yorker article about Orange is the New Black. In it, folks are talking about being on a hit show and watching it while bartending. And there's no shame in bartending. I've done it. Lots of people have done it. But if you've done that work and you've gotten a day rate of maybe, depending on what the budget is, that might be at the bottom $216 a day. It might go higher, up to almost $1,000 a day. That's not a livable wage. And if you got paid for the one day you were on it and you're not getting paid every time that's streamed, that's an issue. So it's really the reruns conversation just kind of gone through. As a producer, the strikes, and I live in Los Angeles, so I'm watching them, you know, all the time. As a producer, it's been interesting because a lot of people are in sort of fill the pipeline mode and like, let's get ready so that as soon as the strikes are done, we can go. And for the most part, people are actually very respectful about it and in solidarity with it because the studios frustrate us all, right? And so for the most part, it will go like, this is a thing I'm working on. When the strikes are finished, we will talk about the writer's room. We will talk about the writer. We will talk about the script. We will talk about who might be cast. And so you don't take it further than that. But it's a time in which a lot of people are, a lot of agents, actually a lot of people are getting agents right now because agents are going, okay, there's going to be some attrition. Some people are going to say, I don't want to be in this business anymore. And they're going to leave. So a lot of agents are reaching out to people and saying, hey, come do a monologue for me. A lot of writers are getting agents because they're like, show me something you wrote a long time ago. Show me something you wrote before May. And let me read it and see if we can work together. So a lot of people are kind of taking a minute, kind of rebooting. As a producer, I also do documentary, which is not affected by any of that because writers and actors, not so much. So I've kind of doubled down on 2 documentary projects. The 2 feature films that I co-wrote, that I'm shopping around and working on getting funded, they're written. So, you know, I can have those conversations with potential funders and in some ways we're having longer and more thoughtful meetings and more meetings because people are available, you know, especially for documentary, right? More people are like, okay, I have nothing scripted to do. What you got in the documentary realm, you know? So, yeah, it's an interesting time. I don't think it's going to be resolved too soon. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's being resolved right now while we're sitting here because a lot of people are really hurting and want to get back to work, but there's a lot of issues to be solved. And I think a big issue with the writer's strike is that it's kind of an unknowable question. Like, what does generative AI mean? We don't know yet. We kind of have to get there. And both sides are kind of being asked to imagine something they don't know. So I think it may be a while, but we shall see. But in the meantime, I think a lot of people are supporting them, and a lot of people are like having as much conversation as you can without asking someone to do that kind of work. That's a good question. Thanks for asking.
Sorry, could you jiggle the mouse so we don't have a blue screen behind us? Did that work? There we go. And that's the conclusion of our program. Thank you so much for coming out. It was great to see all of you. Join me in thanking Amy Güth for that. That is the last public event that Amy Güth will be doing. She has a few more events with classes and other groups on campus. We hope you will join us for the next set of events with the next screenwriter in the series. We've got 3 more this semester, Ron Curry, Whit Stillman, and John Tree Gadsden. They are going to be fantastic, and we hope to see you there. Thank you. Good night.